Hi, morning. Morning. We'll give it a couple of minutes and just let people join. Thanks for joining this morning. Donna, nice to see you. Hopefully everybody can see my screen okay.
All good, thank you. They're still coming into the waiting room, Emma, so I'll just keep an eye on that for you.
Thank you. Okay, morning, Laura. We'll give it till just 2 past and then we'll get going. But thanks for joining this morning, guys. Morning to those joining. Welcome. Thanks for joining. Nice to see you.
Morning.
Morning. Okay, we're a couple of minutes over, so let's get going. So thanks very much for joining this morning. I wanted to cover a couple of areas of people engagement. I'm going to look today at mentoring and people surveys. First, before we get going, just a couple of housekeeping points. I want the session to be really informal and interactive and informative. So feel free to use the chat for either posting questions, and I will be stopping at intervals for checking the chat for questions, but also use the chat just to have some conversation, raise some points, feel free to interact. Also, if when we stop for questions, if you want to raise your hand, come off mute and come on camera to discuss, then you're absolutely welcome to. And just as a note, the session is being recorded today, so if you prefer to be off camera for the recording, that's absolutely fine as well. So the topics then that I'm going to look at today are to do with fostering an inclusive people first approach within business. And if used properly, both of these initiatives can show that either you or your business want to listen and learn and improve, make positive changes to the experience of those working with you, and bridge the gap between core teams and senior leadership. Before I get going, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Emma Deeny. I'm the sector rep for people engagement for the Women in Residential Property. I've been working at JLL in their residential team for 8 years, and I have 2 business mentors at JLL, and I have 2 mentees at JLL. And I care very much about people, and it's a big focus in my day job. We work in service industries, everybody on the call does, and people are arguably our biggest asset. So if we make sure to look after our people and our teams, then our people will in turn look after our clients and maintain the service that we're hoping to achieve. Okay, so I'm going to start off looking at mentoring. So I'm going to cover off what mentoring is, why it's valuable, and how to get started. This is not my quote. My quote is that I like to think of mentoring as giving somebody else the benefit of your own hindsight. And when you have made mistakes in life, it's nice to think that they weren't all for nothing and maybe that somebody will benefit from them. So thinking about what mentoring is, there's lots of areas to it. It can be used for training and coaching individuals. It can be quite useful as a motivating tool. You can use it to impart that wisdom and advice from your own experience, your own hindsight, and use it to make help somebody get to their ultimate success and achieve their goals, using the coaching and support and giving them direction along the way. There's different forms of mentoring. You may have come across some of these or been involved in some of these. So one is speed mentoring, where the premise of these is that we keep sessions short. They can sometimes be just one-off events. It's a good way to attract mentors, especially at a senior level, who are very busy, because it's potentially a lower time commitment than traditional mentoring. It's also a good way to test it out and see if it's for you, whether as a mentor or as a mentee. The downsides to speed mentoring is that it can limit that relationship building opportunity from other forms. There's also group mentoring, and this is where you may have one mentor, but several mentees involved in sessions. Again, good way to keep things time efficient, especially for busy people, senior leaders. Also good in cases where you've got a specific goal or skill set focus. So keeping it very focused and sort of targeting the purpose of the mentoring. But again, it can limit that relationship building opportunity, and also it can limit sharing, as some people might not feel happy to ask questions in front of others that they may do on a one-on-one basis. You might have heard about reverse mentoring as well. So this is really bringing the concept of mentoring down to its very basic, really, which is learning from someone else's experience. And experience doesn't always necessarily mean somebody who is older or more senior in the business. Reverse mentoring is identifying where you may have experience gaps and spending time with someone who's more experienced in that area. So reverse mentoring is common practice in the D&I space. So you may have ethnicity and gender reverse mentoring programs where underrepresented colleagues are paired up with maybe more senior and experienced in the business colleagues about educating those senior colleagues in the areas where maybe there is their experience and skills gap. And then there's traditional mentoring, and that's what I'm going to be looking at today. But the principles that I'll run through can be applied in whatever format suits you and your business. So thinking about traditional mentoring, it's generally where a more senior person in the business who has more business experience, industry experience, career life experience, aims to share their greater knowledge and support the growth and development of more junior colleagues, with the aim to not answer the questions or challenges directly of the mentee, but through sharing their mentor's experiences and exploring challenges together, allowing the mentee to start to find way back to their own solutions, which will then inevitably equip them with the tools to navigate future career challenges. Mentoring is important, and if done well, can be a really valuable tool for people engagement. For mentors, it shows you how far you've come and perhaps how much you've learned and grown yourself. And maybe it's with that everything's relative. And when you see somebody at an earlier stage in the career, you realize just how far you've come. And then it allows you to give back and share the lessons you've learned along the way, including the mistakes probably. And then for mentees, it can boost loyalty and motivation and allows more junior people in the business to feel heard, which is also increasingly important in the world of work and we'll cover more of that in the surveys section shortly. And then for the business, it shows that you are a people first business and that you are happy to listen to the challenges of everyone, not just the leaders of the business. And it also keeps leadership connected to the teams on the ground doing the everyday work with the everyday challenges, and it keeps people connected. So I wanted to make sure that this session was actually really practical, that you could go away after this session at 12 o'clock and literally go and set up a mentoring program. So I wanted to give you some really good tools and techniques, and happy to, I put my contact details at the end, and if you want to have the resources and sort of the information pack shared at the end, absolutely happy, just reach out and I'll provide that. So when you're building your mentoring program, there's a few things to think about. You want to think about who would be involved, both mentees and mentors. Like, would you have it open to everybody, or would you nominate certain people? Would you allow it to be open for like volunteers and allow it to happen organically? I mean, the argument there is obviously that you want people to engage because they're choosing to, not because you're compelling them to. Also, can mentees choose their mentors or vice versa, or will you decide? And if it's you, how will you make that decision? Will everybody in your business be paired with a mentee mentor, or is it going to be limited to spaces and quite aspirational? What will your program look like? Will it be 6 months or 12 months? Would you look at speed mentoring as a one-off event, or would you want some ongoing, longer term relationships to be built? And then also, who would oversee the program? Is it that you'll take control of it? Will you assign it to somebody? Will you just set it up and let it run itself? These are all things to consider ahead of setting it up. And also, when thinking about the skills of a mentor, not everybody is cut out to be a mentor. Even the most experienced leaders may not be skilled mentors, and that's something to consider. There's probably a lot to think about there. So I wanted to run through what I've done in the past when setting up mentor programs. So you can take as much or as little from here as you want to. But this is what I've done in the past to give you a kind of framework, if it helps you get going. So how we've done it in the past is we first of all invite all of our mentors. So we send that out to the sort of senior bands of the business and ask them to share their skill sets, their experience, and what they would hope to achieve from being a mentor. Once we've got our bank of mentors, we then send out invites to mentees based on grading. Now, it depends on how big your organization is and how many people you're working with. The reason I started with mentors is because I obviously needed to make sure that I had a pool of mentors before offering the mentor program. Once I had that, then I might have a sort of mid-band and senior band of mentors, and then I sent out invites to the business based on those, so that I had a kind of aspirational career gap between mentee mentor. And then I asked those mentees for the reasons that they were applying and what they hope to gain from it. Laura, you're asking size of the business. What size of business needs a mentor program? I would say any. You could just be 2 people in the business. I think part of line management is mentoring. So even if I'm speaking from a kind of bigger organization, but the principles are exactly the same. And even if you're just 2 people and manager and team member, then I think to have a regular sort of time slot put aside for mentoring and coaching, as well as the day-to-day, to-do list and performance management, I think it's really important, and a lot of it can cross over. What I'm sort of largely talking about is a more formal program. but a lot of the principles can apply no matter the size of the organization. I then made the pairings myself in our organization. I felt like the guys on the sofa of maths. It was like mentoring at first sight instead of marriage at first sight. And I based that on the reasons for applying by the mentees and matched that with the experience and skill set of those who had put themselves forward as mentors. I then set up some mentor coaching, and I think this is really important, that just having longevity in the business or in the industry and a senior title, again, it doesn't necessarily make you a good mentor. You need to be making sure that mentors are supported and prepped. We had some in-person sessions for our mentor pool, a chance to explain what mentoring is, allow them to share any concerns or questions, and also just to make sure that there was some consistency for the business in terms of everybody's understanding and expectation of mentoring. And then we had that sort of consistency in the approach to roll out of the program. We then did a kickoff event, inviting all of our mentees and mentors together. It was done as a sort of a networking, social, kind of nice event. But what it allowed us to do was to get everybody in the room and then set those expectations on what mentoring is and also what mentoring isn't, which I'll cover. And so everybody then is in the same boat when it comes to launch. And then the other thing was just making sure that we have regular check-ins. So I would send out quarterly check-ins to the mentees and to the mentors separately, with some additional resources and support. Maybe it would be an interesting podcast or an e-learning, or just some advice that some of the other mentees or mentors have shared. And just checking in to make sure everything is going okay. Sometimes mentees and mentors needed a bit of a nudge and just say, are you still wanting this? Because your mentee or mentor hasn't heard. And just to kind of, just to check in. In some cases, there was a bit of switching around, which was absolutely fine because we wanted to make sure that it was a good fit. I'll cover check-ins a little bit more. And then also the frameworks. So I talked about expectations. Setting expectations is really, really important. Making sure that all of these areas are clear for everybody from the outset is really important. So agreeing the frequency. Now, there was no hard and fast rule on any of this. This was up to each individual pairing to make that decision based on what works for them. So they could agree how often they were meeting. Most people went for monthly meeting, but we would suggest not less than quarterly because that's quite a long time then between meetings. The duration, we thought the scheme probably goes for around 12 months, but do what works for you and it can be agreed mutually. Again, I've said that there was regular check-ins by me as a kind of facilitator of the program, but also obviously I encouraged the mentees and mentors to check in with each other in between formal sessions. One thing that can quite often get forgotten is stakeholder management. So where the mentee and mentor are not maybe in direct line management or outside of each other's team, or maybe even outside of each other's business line, keep the line manager informed out of courtesy. And also they're going to need probably some time out of the business. I'm sorry that I keep adjusting my seat, it keeps sinking. They're probably going to need some time out of the business to meet with their mentor. So as a courtesy, always make sure that the line manager is informed. And also for the mentor, that can be quite useful as well, just to check in with the line manager to say, how are things going since I've been mentoring your direct report? Have you noticed any difference? Is there any boosting? We've been really working on confidence, or I don't know, that might be a good way just to check in on how it's going for you as well. And then it's always good to reflect for both mentees and mentors, reflect on how far the relationship has come, how far you as an individual have come, what are you getting out of it? And again, that goes for both mentees and mentors. Mentors should also feel some self-reflection, some self-improvement, some that they're getting something out of the relationship, not just for the mentee. And also, one of the really important pieces to mention around that expectation setting is around confidentiality. If everybody agrees that whatever is discussed will not be shared, it opens up that you want to open up that relationship building, that sense of trust, so that you can get the most out of that relationship. But it has to be there genuinely. And if there were any exceptions, you need to be clear on that as well. So I've put down there, obviously, anything serious in nature, then, you know, the mentor might have a duty of care that they would have to act. And that should be really clear to the mentee if that ever happens. And also I put down there, unless agreed. So it might be that the mentee has shared something that they do want the mentor to act on and help with. And I'll cover that as well, as sort of one of the red flags, just because it can be a little bit of a tricky area in terms of what is the role of the mentor when it comes to sort of intervening in their role and their day-to-day. And then finally, I put together some a suggested structure. These are, you don't feel like you need to make millions of notes. If I can send you all of these after the session. But we suggested the first meet to be quite informal, maybe a coffee, just so that the pairing can meet up and just check, and to be very, very honest about, you know, am I right here to support this person, or am I going to learn from this person as both mentee and mentor? Do I feel that I can trust my mentor? Do I feel I can help my mentee? We did have some people switching, I said, like I said, and that's good. We want people to get a good fit, and it shows great self-awareness, and it shows that everybody is in it for success. Within that initial meeting, the pairing should then agree the frequency, how often they want to meet up. Also show commitment in that, set up a recurring diary invite. It's so easy to say, okay, let's meet up again in a month, and then if nobody acts on it there and then, these things can drift. So, you know, set that up as a monthly reminder, as a calendar recurring appointment, and then it won't drift. And also agree on the environment, you know, the level of formality that you want. Maybe you want it to be quite formal and it'll be in an office setting, or maybe you want it to be less formal and you might meet in a coffee shop and be out of the office, and consider that kind of change of scene, just to give the mind a little bit of a break from work, and to maybe open up in a different way than you would if it was more formal in a meeting room of an office. Or even, you know, going into spring, as things are a bit nicer, maybe a walk and talk, grab a coffee, go for a walk. You don't know sort of what might come out in different environments. And then the session one, so sort of your first formal session, should be looking to really agree some goals and expectations and outcomes. SMART goals are always recommended. If you're not familiar, this is where you make sure that goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound, so that you can very clearly see if they were met or not. Also consider stretching assignments. Potentially, if that's relevant, not all mentoring has to have homework. Some can just be in the room at the time, and what goes on within that hour, 90 minutes, is the mentoring, and that's that. You might want to consider stretching assignments or introductions or networking opportunities, and look to those kind of extra outside of the room, but not necessarily. It's what works for you guys. And actually, if you decided within the pair that a stretching assignment is okay, but maybe one stretching assignment across the year doesn't mean you're going to be sent away with homework every time. So there are some sort of options, and those are the things that should reinforce the conversations and the priorities that are coming up. And then in terms of every session after that, always start with a check-in, because what you might find is the the priority or the focus of your last session, which was hopefully led by the mentee, might have changed, and it might not be the focus now. So making sure that mentors allow the mentees to lead, and that can be a challenge point. That can be one of the pitfalls. Mentors, because they are more senior in the business, their default might be to be more assertive and lead in those conversations. And so it's a learning curve in that situation for mentors to sit back and to let the mentee lead. And then it's also a learning for the mentor to the mentee to step up and to start to assert in that situation, and to lead the conversation and to lead with their own priorities. Also, just thinking about maybe if there were any actions or assignments or goals set from the last time, making sure to check in on that, and just making sure that you're bringing it all back and following up on each session, especially if you've got a little bit of a gap. If you are only doing them every other month or quarterly, you probably want a bit of a refresh for yourself as well as the other person. And then I've put down there, celebrate wins. I think it's really important to recognize growth and achievement along the way. Don't wait until a sort of the end. If you're doing a 12-month program, don't wait for a year to say this is the outcome and this is what you did well. You know, celebrate it at the time and congratulate people for the growth as they're growing, not just once they've grown. And then also reviewing failures. I think getting comfortable reviewing failure is really, really valuable. If you have a mentoring relationship where both parties, ideally, have a comfortable space to say, I've messed up here, actually, can I talk this through? That's where all the learning is. So to get to the point where you're in a space where you can share failure is really, really valuable. I said it before, there's I covered what mentoring is, but what mentoring isn't is also very important. And it's important to be clear from the start on what this is for mentors and mentees. So this is something that we covered in that kickoff event, just to make sure that everybody is on the same page. It's not counselling. It's not direct line management, unless you've got a smaller team and it's a part of line management. It's not about having all the answers. Like I said earlier, it's about supporting that person to come to those solutions themselves through exploration and through your experiences, but not just providing the answers. And it's not performance management. It's something very different to that. And I would say to these points, it would be useful before setting up a mentoring program to have resources in place for these needs. So if these needs are coming out, if there is a need for something that is more in the sort of realms of somebody needing emotional support, then see what options they have available for that you can help and support and offer, that wouldn't be, you know, through your mentor. I think that that's a learning experience for mentors. They, like I said, they can get themselves into a bit of a tricky situation where they feel they want to help their mentee and want to take a little bit more of an active role. And I think that that's something where the check-ins with mentors regularly is really important, because you want to make sure that they know that they've got support and backing, and that they've got somebody to go to if they do feel like that they're over promising or stepping in where they maybe feel they shouldn't. And I think that's where the check-ins with the mentors is just as important as the check-ins with the mentees. I want to also give you a few red flags as well. Mentors should remain self-aware of their own biases, whether that's conscious or unconscious, trying to keep opinions out of the session, being aware of any microaggressions, making sure to keep the sessions professional and not overly personal or oversharing. Also, try not to get sucked into negativity, not allowing either party to begin bad-mouthing either clients or colleagues, and obviously avoiding abuse of power. Sometimes just because you know more doesn't mean that you should share that, or get maybe somebody more junior to do your dirty work because of a relationship that you're building in terms of mentoring. And then I wanted to just share a few of the common pitfalls I found as well. I've covered preparing your mentors and making sure that they don't get themselves into tricky situations that are areas of support beyond mentoring. But also being clear on expectations. A lot of the issues that we find is because we just weren't clear enough on expectations from the outset. So making sure everything is really clear in what mentoring is and what it isn't, and where to go in those areas where mentoring isn't the support point. That helps making sure that that's really clear from the off. Time is a common pitfall, and I'm sure everybody is guilty of bouncing a few things off into the distance. People say that they're too busy, and then when they get busy, mentoring then feels like a nice to have rather than a must have, and meetings can continue to drift. So I think be realistic from the start. If every month feels optimistic, then don't overpromise. I think fewer meetings where you're able to commit to them is better than having more meetings that you're having to cancel. And also that assertive piece is a useful one for mentors automatically stepping into the assertive role and leading on those meetings, and it's a learning curve for them to step back, and a really nice learning curve for mentees to start to act more assertively with a senior member of staff, and learning to assert their own needs in the room, and it being the priority of what they have going on and what they need. I'm just going to leave this little happy slide here of some of our happy mentees and mentors, while I invite any questions or thoughts. So I'm just going to have a look. Yeah, just that one from Laura. So if anybody wants to come off mute and ask anything or share any of your own thoughts or experiences, absolutely welcome to. Would you recommend setting an agenda? I actually would, yeah. So the one of the framework, let's have a look. That's session 1. Yeah, so there's kind of the beginning of an agenda there, and I think that I'm a big fan of clear signposting, and I think that that's a really nice way to make sure that everybody is joining the meeting aware of what is coming and the expectations. So I would recommend setting an agenda. That's probably something you could set up in either the initial kind of informal meeting or the first meeting, to say, you know, things crop up and things might not always go to plan, but let's agree loosely that we will always check in on what we said last time, check in with you on what's happening with you right now, and go away with some actions. And it might just be that really clear 3 points, but I think agendas are good just to make sure that everybody is clear on expectations when joining the sessions. Age difference. I don't think it matters. I think when you think about like reverse mentoring, that's about identifying skill set and experience gaps. That's not age. You know, there might be a cause for, I mean, there could be reverse mentoring when it comes to age. We might have very senior leaders who get reverse mentored by millennials coming into the business, and this might be their understanding and their skill gap. They might have been in the business for 20, 30, 40 years. The world has changed since then. You know, the world, we've got the, you know, the group now entering the workplace are millennials who have grown up with Uber, Spotify, Netflix. They are used to this immediacy in the world, that older generations never had. We went to Blockbusters and we had to wait for things, and there's a different culture, a different mindset. That also, that that's all the technology piece as well. There's a different understanding of the capability of technology that the younger group coming into the business have got a world of experience that they could share up, as well as that longevity of time in the business being shared down. So I actually don't think age difference matters. I think what is more important is identifying the gap in skills or experience that you're trying to plug, and going to that somebody else who can plug that gap. Whereas I don't know that necessarily age is the defining answer. It just happens to be in our world that those with experience are older. Would you recommend to only use internal mentors from the company, or can external mentors also be beneficial? Yeah, both. I think experience is experience. So I would go to anybody that plugs a gap in terms of what you're looking for as a mentee, and offering yourself out. I mean, if anybody here wants to offer themselves as a mentor, or put themselves as a looking for a mentor, use the chat, put it down here. We're all working in a similar industry, but we've all got skill set and experience that can support each other. So yeah, I don't recommend either internal or external as a preference. I think grab experience from everywhere. What's the time commitment in setting up and supporting a mentorship program? I guess you get out what you put in. So if you can dedicate a little bit more time to it, then it's probably going to be a little bit more robust and thought through. But equally, if you haven't got a lot of time, don't let that put you off. Commit the time that you have, put together the structure, and if you've got the right people in place and giving them some support from the start, then it should really kind of look after itself with a few check-ins. But I've kind of put together quite a large, involved, robust framework here. It doesn't have to be that involved if you've got smaller numbers of people, or you've got sort of some obvious mentoring relationships to handle. So don't be put off by feeling like it's a massive time commitment. It's still absolutely worth doing, and it's really just an upfront sort of time investment. Once it's going, the time it needs is pretty minimal to keep it going. What dynamics work well for pairings? Male, female, age difference? Do you have an impact on the experience? I wouldn't even want to try and consider it as part of the decision making. It's probably more relevant in reverse mentoring to think about the male female age piece. In terms of traditional mentoring, you kind of want to avoid that being a consideration. Coming back to the point about, I think it's a couple of slides, asking people for their skill set and experience and what their reasons are. I think that's what it should come down to. So making people sort of really think and analyze, what is it that I want to achieve out of this? And having had your mentors put down, what can I offer in this, and have those things matched, and those values, principles and experiences, that matters more than male, female and age. What course of action should you take if the program is set up and someone's not getting on with their mentor, or vice versa? And I have had that. So in some cases, it kind of just doesn't really get going. One person's constantly chasing the other and it never gets put in the diary, in which case I would speak to both, see who's still interested in the program. Somebody might have said, oh, do you know what, I've bitten off more than I can chew. I haven't got time for this. I'm really sorry. And that's fine. We'll, explain that to the other party. And then somebody else might say, oh yeah, I couldn't get hold of my mentor or mentee, whichever way around it is, but I'm really keen. Can you put me with somebody else? And in which case I would just make a new make a new pairing, and again go back to that kind of criteria of skill set, experience, and what feels like a good match, and then make another introduction. We have had cases where mentees have come to me and said, I don't feel my mentor is senior enough. And so it's just a case of talking it through and understanding. And I will say, the reason that I put you with this person is because you said you wanted X, Y, and Z, and I felt this was a good match with their blah, blah, blah. And it might have just been that actually in their initial meeting that hadn't been really clearly communicated, and comes back to the point somebody's already made about an agenda. Maybe on that first meeting, the agenda should be, what do you want to get out of this? What can I offer? And vice versa, so that everybody's really, really clear. Because in the case that I'm thinking of, they said, oh, this person's not senior enough, they're not going to be able to teach me anything. But actually, once I said, oh, it's because you wanted X, Y, and Z that they could fulfill, they didn't even realize that. They went back to the sort of kickoff meeting together, and they're now actually still paired up. So being really overt with what you want to your mentor and what you can offer to your mentee is really important from the start. Where are we? I've witnessed amazing reverse mentoring with a business GM and a new graduate, and with the pharmaceutical client I used. That's great. I've heard such great things about reverse mentoring. It is brilliant. It's so needed in our world, I think. It's become more common to see people sitting in either camps, not being very proactive with communications. It's been a challenge for me in the past when a mentor isn't naturally communicative. Yeah, so I would yeah, so that's something that I said at the beginning. Not everybody who is very, you could be brilliant at what you do, and you could be very senior, and you could be a leader, and you could tick all the boxes, but it doesn't necessarily make you a good mentor. There is a specific skill set to being a mentor, and it's worth taking the time to think about that and to upskill and to make sure that you are equipped to be a mentor. Merely having the longevity in the business, a senior title, and a lot of business experience doesn't automatically qualify you or mean that you're going to be good at that. So I would, if I was giving any kind of takeaway piece of advice, it would be to really properly manage the expectations of the mentor, and to give a lot of support right from that off point of the supporting the mentors in getting themselves confident and skilled in being good mentors. I'm just conscious of time, so I'm going to move on to people surveys, but I'll whiz through this fairly quickly, and we can come to more questions at the end, and I can answer both mentoring and people survey questions. I just don't want to run out of time on the second topic. So, okay, so I'm going to have a look now at people surveys, why they're important, what you want to achieve, and how to get started, similar to what I've just covered with mentoring. Now, the value of people surveys is there's a lot of crossover actually with doing a kind of questionnaire survey of your people and a mentoring program. Both of them are they're both initiatives that are people first. They can help foster an inclusive and heard culture. But people survey specifically really gives insights into the experience of people working in the business. You might find that people will share on a survey what they wouldn't say in person. So you might get some of these insights in a one-to-one or in a mentoring session, but there might also be things that are only shared maybe when it's under the guise of a survey. It helps you or leaders to identify and gives the opportunity to resolve any challenges that people are raising in the business. So that could be business or process challenges, like they could know that there's a quicker, slicker way of doing something, or it could be people or conduct challenges that obviously as leaders you would want to know and hear. And ideas for improvement that you would only hear if you asked. There might be people who are sitting who do potentially a repetitive job, who sit rolling their eyes because they know it's clunky and long-winded and inefficient, and they were never asked if it could be done better, and then you ask and find out it could, and you could save everybody a lot of time and effort. And it gives everybody a voice, which is obviously incredibly important to making sure you're giving this, you're growing a culture of inclusivity within your business. But I do want to emphasize that don't do a people survey for the sake of it. You've got to make sure that it is meaningful, and that you or the leadership in your business have got to be open to hearing negative feedback and willing to make changes. If not, then just don't bother, because you could do more harm than good, and your first survey will be your last, because nobody will do it a second time. So I would say one of the most important things before you get going is to identify what it is that you want to achieve. Once you've identified what you want to achieve, keep that in mind at all times, because survey writing can drift and you can lose focus. And if you do that in the writing of it, you'll lose engagement in the participation of it. So think about what it is that you want to know, really, really clearly, and define that, and think, how best can I find that out? And also, beyond that, don't wait to get the results before deciding what you'll do with the answers. You need to know before you do a survey what you would do with the answers, because if you ask everybody, you hear some feedback that you don't like, and you do nothing about it, you've potentially done more harm to the morale of the business. So you have to be prepared to make changes and to be open to listening to people's challenges. I would actually go as far as to say, don't ask questions about something you are unwilling or can't change. If as you're writing it, you're thinking, oh, I wonder if everybody hates this. If it's something you can't make a change on, or you're not willing to, or it's not in your power to, then don't ask, because you're opening a can of worms that you potentially can't do anything about. Okay, I've put together a quick top tips for survey writing. Short and sweet. Goes without saying, nobody wants to spend more than a few minutes. And if you do want high levels of engagement, or you're going to be doing them fairly frequently, the shorter the better. To keep engagement, make it really easy. Use a tool that allows them to access it anywhere on any device. There's SurveyMonkey, where you can get a free version of the platform, or Microsoft Forms if you've got a Microsoft suite as part of your business. Microsoft Forms is very quick and easy. Stick with multiple choice questions where you can make quick selections. I would limit the open text boxes, maybe just to 1 or 2 of your most important areas. And also a good tool for collecting the data will also make it so easy for you to analyze the data. So making sure that you have a little play around with the tools is important as well. And I put down framing there. So consistency of framing is really important, and I've got some examples to show you on the next slide, so I'll come back to that one. And also with don't ask 2 questions within 1 question, and that sounds really obvious, but it is so easily done, and I've got an example on that as well. And again, only ask what's important. Question writing can end up drifting, so come back to that point. Once you've asserted what it is you want to get out of the survey, keep that front of mind and keep coming back to it. And then finesse it. I would always have a couple of people look through the survey before it goes out, because if you've got areas where it could be open to interpretation that you don't spot because you wrote it, it makes the data completely impossible to draw conclusions from. So you should make sure that you get it tested with a few people beforehand. So let me explain what I mean by framing. So this is a probably quite familiar question format. This is a really good way to gather lots of quantitative data. It's easy for the user to complete, and it can be really useful to see trends over time. Incidentally, if you are planning to do surveys regularly, like maybe 6 monthly or 12 monthly, then keep as much of it the same as possible. Don't be tempted to have a little rethink and a reformat, because you've got no way of drawing any trends. So if you want to see trends over time, make sure that you're using the same survey over and over. You could add more questions, but I wouldn't take any questions away, because you want to be able to see some trends. So, okay, so this one, for instance, okay, the first point here, because I've got some mixed framing here. The first point is positioned in the positive. So surveys can be a valuable tool in business, and I've positioned it in the positive, and I'm looking for an agree or a strongly agree as a good outcome when reading the data. So if I positioned everything in the positive, and I'm then looking for agrees and disagrees, if there are any disagrees and stronglies, they will flag to me really quickly and obviously. The next one is positioned as a negative. I don't like surveys. So now I'm looking for sort of the good outcome is when they disagree with that. So there's no right or wrong here. I would always go positive assertion or statement, looking for positive answers, because then all your negatives are going to stand out to you really quickly when it comes to analysing your data. And then that final point, this is where it's an example of 2 questions or assertions within one. Surveys have their place, but I find them boring. That's 2 different things. So if somebody answers agree to that, what does that mean? That they have their place, agree? That they boring, agree? Both? One, not the other? The data is now completely pointless to that. So just be careful not to string 2 questions or assertions together. And that's something to look out for, and get anybody that sense checks your surveys to look out for with you as well. And then a few other things to consider, and whether it should be anonymous. It's always a kind of question mark on that. The pros are that people might speak more openly, and you might hear more of the truth and get higher levels of engagement. The cons are maybe people may not trust it, and that you might have to reassure people that their responses will be kept confidential. Some comments actually aren't helpful when they are anonymous. So for instance, if somebody says, my manager is never in the office, not particularly helpful when it's anonymous and you've got a big team or several offices. But you could still, you can overcome that by maybe putting an optional name box on it. One good thing that you could do for that is if you put in a box to say, you know, if you had a magic wand, what one thing would you change about the business? Or what idea, or like, what would you implement? If you had something like that and you said, oh, anything that we, any like top idea that we go and implement, there's a prize. And so maybe then, you know, encourage people to put their name against their ideas. But again, it undermines the anonymity if you do want to keep it anonymous. I would say that if you do go down the anonymous route, just be careful not to collect too much profiling information, because then that undermines the anonymity as well. So don't say, please select your office, your team, how long you've been with the business. All these things are now just narrowing that down and making it that if you wanted to, you could probably work out who's answering. And also with those points of profiling, do you need them? Are they relevant? Are they really going to give you any sort of insights? So again, come back to that point on what it is that I'm trying to achieve, and am I achieving it? I'm a big fan of signposting, making it clear from the outset why you're sending a survey, what you hope to achieve from it. Is there something in particular that you want to hear from the team about? Is there a change that your business is going through? Is there maybe, you know, is it one focused on what do we do well? Is it one about people engagement and the experience of working here? Or is it about our place in the business and the industry and how we can feel we compete with competitors, whatever it is, make sure that it's got a focus and that you're communicating that to the business. Also telling them what next steps are going to be, and if you want to have meaningful responses to it, make sure that you're reiterating that there will be meaningful outcomes. So be open and honest in your survey, because we want to hear it, and we will make genuine changes, and we will show you meaningful outcomes. And also sharing the results. If it's something that they fill in and it goes out into the abyss and they don't see any changes, then they're unlikely to engage in it again. Whereas if you make sure to share the results, then you're building trust in the process so that you can do it again, drive more engagement the next time around. And a nice way of doing that is, you said, we did. So you said that this wasn't very good and we did this for you, or you said this and we did that, or you said this and we're not able to do that and here's why. So actually the things that you're not able to change, or you choose not to change, still be overt with that and explain why, because there could still be a feeling of, oh, I said this on my survey, nothing ever changed, and somebody else will say, oh, I did as well, and nothing ever changed. So those things, that if something is quite, overwhelmingly clear on a survey, then address it if you're not going to make a change, and explain why and the business rationale. I have whizzed through that quite quickly, just I'm aware of time. I'm going to come back to questions, so I'll work backwards. So Donna, we had staff feedback about lack of communication from the partners. So when I became a partner, I introduced a staff quarterly newsletter with a fun competition corner to win a coffee band gift card. We're now surprised by the lack of engagement. Okay, is that sort of like a suggestion box, or like ideas, encouraging ideas, that sort of thing?
So it was more about staff are complaining that they never get communication from partners, and they only ever find out of staff development once it's happened and things like that. So because there was this overwhelming feedback, lack of communication being filtered down, when I became a partner and I fed back on it, that's why I got tasked with creating this newsletter. So it was more about being able to, pass on messages from partners to kind of get this cross communication between the teams, try and get staff to engage. But one of the ways of trying to get them to engage as a whole, because we have two offices and there's a real lack of them and us, and integration going on. So, and we introduced this competition corner with just to get a little, coffee card to win. And there's just, I think we had 4 people respond, and it's just, it's like, people complained about communication. We introduced something. And there's even less communication going on.
I know. It's never a one-time fix. These things are always drip, 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 and things over time. And I don't know this. I don't know the mentality of it, but I always find that you need to not only you need to tell you did, and then you do again, and then you remind that you did. And so it's really just kind of reinforcing that point, because we all know that the sort of negativity spiral is like really, really quick and easy to get on board with, and it's so hard to undo and to to make positivity go the other way. And it's the same with this kind of this, whatever the case is. In your example, it's that we don't get communications from the top. There's that sense and perception, and you can fix the actual issue, but now the perception is much bigger than the issue. And so now you've got the piece where you fix the issue, you've now got to work twice as hard to overcome the perception of it. So I would say that, for instance, our surveys, we would do the you said we did, you said we did, and then every time we might make a change or a rollout, we'd bring it back to the people survey. The reason we're doing this is because you told us on the 2024 survey that this was important, and this is what we're doing. The other changes we made were diddly-dee, 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 and we're reinforcing that you said we heard, you said we heard. And that's the challenge, that the lack of communication is is the incident, which you can rectify fairly quickly. The bigger problem is you've got this perception of there's a lack of communication here. So even once you've fixed it, you haven't gotten past the perception. So you have to work doubly, 10 times as hard to try to overcome that. So I think it's really just reiterate, remind, and bring it into, you know, kind of all points of conversation. If you do town halls, remind them on the town hall. If there's other communications, oh, don't forget to, and and just keep coming back to the reason we're doing this is because you told us here, and keep coming back to the why. Not only we are communicating, but to be really, really overt that we are communicating because you said that there was a lack of communication. So here's another communication, and just keep reiterating, because it's actually the perception that is now the problem to overcome, not the actual problem you had in the beginning. Let me have a look. Oh, you spoke, we listened segment, which covered updates to our platform. Yeah, brilliant. I think that's really good. Maybe if you had like an intranet or a newsletter or something like that, or if you do have a kind of suggestion box or ideas factory or anything like that, then I think those things are really good. I'm aware that we're a little bit over, which is great actually, because it's because you guys had so many questions, and I'm sorry I've not even gotten to them all. If anybody wants to connect, that's me on LinkedIn. And also I wanted to give a quick shout out to Women in Residential Property. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak today, and thank you to all of you guys who have joined. I appreciate it. Donna Butler, who is our rep for Devon and Cornwall, has written an article for the May newsletter for Women in Residential Property about mentoring. So it's quite a nice follow-up actually to today, to hear about her experience working as a mentor with Plymouth University. So look out for that as well on the May newsletter. And if anybody is interested to become either a sector rep or a regional rep for women in residential property, then also reach out to me or any of the other ladies on the group. And yeah, thank you very much. I'm sorry that we have gone over a couple of minutes, but I really appreciate all of your time, and I'm sorry if I didn't get to your questions, but I'm really happy that you engaged and had so many questions. So thank you so much.